Hi, friends. This is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about a foundation player. And we're going to talk about this in context to Netflix's Zero Day series with Robert De Niro. But no spoilers, no spoilers. So you could go ahead and enjoy Zero Day whenever you're ready to watch it. It's fantastic. 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot recommend it enough. And no spoilers here. So I'm going to talk about Robert De Niro. I'm going to talk about a Dungeons and Dragons Foundation player, and I'm going to talk about Zero Day, but absolutely no spoilers. Okay, so it's really interesting. So let's talk about Zero Day. Okay, so Netflix comes on. I have Netflix, and Netflix has been promoting this for like a week or two, called Zero Day, and I did with Robert De Niro. And I didn't even waste my time with the trailer. I'm like, Robert De Niro's kind of done. I love his early stuff. I'm like everybody else. I loved him in Goodfellas, and all the stuff he did in his early career. But lately, he's been doing a lot of paycheck gigs, right? Like just like, hey, I'm here. Like, give me my paycheck. I'll do a couple lives, whatever. A lot of garbage, right? And I just like The Irishman, and even stuff with like big directors, just utter crap. And like, so I did not like any of his recent stuff. So I didn't even work. I was like, I'm not watching whatever this is, right? I was like, I'm sure it's some stupid movie or something But this is just a paycheck gig for him. This is gonna suck, right? Well, I come in and they're like, "Hey, Zero Day's up," and so I'm like, "Okay, it's here. It's arrived. I'll take a look." So first of all, it wasn't a movie; it was a series. I'm like, "Okay, that's surprising." And then it was an original. And then I saw from the poster that it was an original property, and I'm like, "Okay, it's an original story. It's a series." And this doesn't look like a paycheck gig. I'll give it a try, right? And so I started watching it. It's fantastic. It's Robert De Niro right back in form, doing his thing, just being Robert De Niro, and he did a phenomenal job in this, right? But so Robert De Niro is back, right? Not just a paycheck gig, but real content, right? So I'm like, great, this is fantastic, right? And then I'm like, and the reason why I gave it is I'm like, it is Robert De Niro. I'm gonna give it a shot. If it doesn't look like a paycheck, I'll give this a try, right? Well, once you realize it's Robert De Niro back in action, back in his form, back at his stride, back at his cadence, right? This is Robert De Niro. Like, he is one of the American greatest actors of all time, right? Now, what's really interesting is, so I start watching this thing, right? And I'm like, okay, this guy Robert De Niro in it, right? So it's probably going to have some other nice cameos, right? Or other people who are in it. And boy, was I right, right? Like, so I'm a huge fan of Jesse Plemons. I think he's one of the best actors today. He is absolutely phenomenal. I recently loved him in A24 Civil War. If you haven't seen that movie, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Fantastic film. Jesse Plemons is brilliant. I've loved him in virtually. I don't think I've ever seen a project that he's in that he is not, that he just doesn't steal the show, right? So I'm like, okay, Robert De Niro is in here, Jesse Plemons is in here. Oh my gosh, that's Angela Bassett, right? And and that's it, right? Everybody else in it, they're fine, but I don't know who they are, right? But Robert De Niro, Jesse Plemons, Angela Bassett, incredible actors, right? Incredible players, right? So here's the idea that we need to start thinking about for the next 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm convinced we did the first 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons almost completely wrong. I think we got about 10% right, and we got 90% completely wrong, right? So we need to start fixing this in the next 50 years, right? And one of the ideas is we were like, oh, every play, hey, Dungeons and Dragons just for fun. If you're having fun, if everybody's having fun, you're doing it right. We now know that's completely wrong, right? That fun is not the point of Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot more value there. There's a lot more purpose there, right? And so once you realize that, right, and you're there to do these incredible things with Dungeons and Dragons, you're there to use Dungeons and Dragons for purpose and to accomplish goals, right? Once you put that into place, it changes everything. And one of the concepts that is fundamentally changed at this point, in my humble opinion, is this idea that not every player at your table is of the same value, right? Like Robert De Niro is not a regular actor, right? He's an actor where you put him in a movie and people just click on the thumbnail. All right, they hit play. Period. Right. Adam Sandler is one of these guys. Mark Wahlberg is one of these guys. They are a foundation player, right? So basically, Robert De Niro changes the structure of an entire project. I'm convinced, right, that this Robert De Niro project came up, and they called Jesse Plemons, and they're like, "You want to be in a project with Robert De Niro?" And he told his agent, "Get it done. I don't care what the pay is. Just get it done. I'll work for scale." Right? I believe that Jesse Plemons and Angela Bassett would work for scale on this project. They're like, it's Robert De Niro. Like, this is going to do nothing but lift up my, my prominence, right? And this is the point. How do we manage players at the table who we know are going to be draws for other players? Because they're not regular players. They're fundamentally more valuable than the other players at the table. We went along with this nonsense that all players are equally valuable. That's not true, right? Like, there are Robert De Niro level Dungeons and Dragons foundational players, and if you get them at the table, they will draw players to the table, and those players will stay there just to be in the proximity of these foundational players, right? And so we need to start thinking about this, and we need to start building language to recognize this among dungeon masters. You would never discuss this at the table, right? You would never say, "Oh, you're the Robert De Niro. The rest of you guys are extras who I could lose," right? But this player needs to stay at the table, right? We don't have language for this. We don't know the etiquette for this. We don't know how to have these conversations and acknowledge that not all players are equally valuable, right? This is a new territory. But in the next 50 years, we got to start fixing things. We have to look at the reality of Dungeons and Dragons, not just the perception, not these myths that we've been clinging to, right? And so this is important, right? We need to realize who's the De Niro, who's the Plemons, who's the Bassett, right? And who's just an extra that we can lose, right? And we're not going to say it to their face. We're not going to be cruel, right? But the reality is all players are not equally valuable, right? And we need to not treat them the same. We need to treat them a bit differently based on their value, right? One person drives in from their local home. One person has a trailer and a team that serves them. All players are not of the same value. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Absolutely nothing more and absolutely nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider like subscribing and have a fetch millennium.